Hey, welcome back. So I want to make a film about earthquake lights. But what happened was an unexpected journey into the unknown. This is two films. Firstly, my preconceived notion of how the earthquake light phenomenon works. And secondly, it's a journey for me into discovering something very new and something very exciting. Join me on this mission to make what I think is one of the most exciting films I have ever made. Earthlights. For centuries, eyewitnesses have reported seeing an inexplicable phenomenon. Strange lights emerging from the ground, or weird glowing lights in the sky. These are known as earthquake lights. Today, a fascinating new theory confirms they are real and offers a possible explanation, one drawn from existing laws of physics that explain how rocks under immense pressure might emit light. I became fascinated by strange earth phenomenon as a child. The Brocken, Will-o'-the-Wisp, St Elmo's Fire, and a story from North Wales of pillars of light rising out of the ground. For hundreds of years there have been legends associated with strange earthlights. They were a possible source for dragon sightings, ghosts, evil spirits, and in our culture, flying saucers. Most of these reports came from places in the world with strong seismic activity. But earthquake lights, due to their fleeting nature, have been hard for the scientific community to research, record, or explain. Few photographs exist. Even today, with camera phones, there are only a few blurry snaps and some CCTV footage. But all that changed on the 13th of March 2011, when the Sakurajima volcano erupted in Japan. Scientists studying the volcano had set up a remote camera to record any possible volcanic activity. What they recorded stunned them. For the first time, the Earthlight phenomenon was recorded in real time. What this footage triggered was possibly a whole new scientific model of how these lights could be produced. To understand this new theory, you first have to understand a very ancient concept: how light is made. The early universe had no light. The first ancient glow only emerged after atoms of hydrogen and helium became stable. The clouds of primordial gas became transparent, releasing our first source of light. In a strange correlation to the Christian Bible creation story, after a period of darkness, the forces of nature said, "Let there be light." the universe lit up. When billions of atoms released their energy from a highly charged state and fell into the stable form we see today. This is one way that photons and light are produced. Imagine a hydrogen atom. Its mainly positive nucleus surrounded by a field of negative energy that we call an electron. There's no single electron particle, more a probability, a negative state of charge hovering above the nucleus, but that strays into the weird world of quantum physics. Keeping it simple, these electrons can exist or orbit the atom at different heights. Think of an aircraft or a satellite circling the Earth. When in a highly charged state, an electron can circle in a higher orbit, but when less excited, it drops down into its more stable orbit, attracted by the pull from the proton's opposite charge. But energy is neither created or destroyed. And here's my analogy. Just like an aircraft landing, the electron has to shed or reduce power to descend into a lower orbit. It does that by losing its energy in the form of a photon. And that is how light is produced by atoms. Well, when I say light, I mean energy in the electromagnetic spectrum. Of course, us humans only see a tiny range of that energy with our eyes, just a few frequencies from red to blue. There are many more, clearly visible to instruments with sensors tuned to those frequencies. But the most important thing to understand about this process is light is only produced when an atom or an electron loses energy. No light is produced when it's in an excited state. This fundamental law of physics might well reveal one mechanism that produces earthquake lights, but supporting evidence was hard to find. There have been a few brave souls who took on the challenge of searching for a way the Earth could produce light. One theory is this: the piezoelectric effect. This works when certain minerals, mainly quartz, is crushed and suddenly released. The crystalline structure can compress and slide past each other. As its facets spring back into shape, a small amount of electrical energy is generated, enough to make a spark and light your barbecue. Given the vast pressure of an earthquake, it seems possible that quartz, buried deep inside the Earth, could cause a giant spark, maybe enough to ionize air and turn it into a glowing plasma. But earthquake lights occur in regions devoid of quartz. Another theory is that any rock under enough pressure can ionize trapped oxygen. As it rises to the surface, the oxygen plasma manifests as light emerging from the ground. But Earthlights have a weirder feature that is not easily explained. People see glowing balls of light floating in the air. These have been mistaken for UFOs, and in fact are the origin of the term flying saucer. On June the 24th, 1947, pilot Kenneth Arnold spotted strange orbs of light flying above Mount Rainier, USA. He described the lights skipping around and as flying discs. His sighting soon got press interest, and a copywriter for an Oregon newspaper changed Arnold's description of flying discs into the headline, "Flying Saucers." This was a time of post-World War II tension, and alien invasion was on everyone's mind. The rest is history. Not so well reported was the fact that recent earthquakes had occurred in the Mount Rainier area. It is now suspected that Kenneth Arnold saw earthquake lights over the seismically active peak. But the Sakurajima volcano holds a clue that possibly reveals what is going on deep underground. When this footage was analysed, a strange and previously unobserved phenomenon was clearly seen. And you can see it too. Watch how the Earthlight emissions grow in strength shortly after a volcanic plume is released. This seems to support the idea of immense forces changing the state of matter. Under pressure, electrons could be forced into higher orbits. Then, as the pressure is released, light is generated. Here it is again. For the first time, we can see how immense pulsating pressure produces light. Is this atomic theory of atoms emitting photons when excited and returning to a stable state the real answer to this riddle? Well, the exact nature of earthquake lights is still a mystery. Some think the enormous forces of nature might even distort our perception of atomic matter and reality, or they unleash electrical discharges great enough to ionize the air above the ground, manifesting flying saucers and great balls of fire. What we do know is that earthquake lights are real. Earthquake lights are a demonstration of the true power of nature. Earthquake lights are a property of fundamental physics, and earthquake lights hold the key to unlocking more mysteries of our universe. So that was my film on earthquake lights. What happened next turned my world upside down. I really like to collaborate with folk who are more knowledgeable than me. So I reached out to the world's leading expert on earthquake lights, Paul Devereux, author of numerous books on the phenomenon, and he'd made an Equinox science film about the subject with a colleague of mine. So I contacted Paul to see if he could possibly answer some questions that I could film via a Zoom call. He graciously accepted. I forwarded a number of interesting questions to Paul, and we set up a time for a Zoom call. But when we spoke, Paul asked me not to record it. Why? Well, for a fascinating reason. He explained to me that he receives multiple requests to appear on TV programs talking about earthquake lights. From what he described as TV producers with a pre-prepared script that could slot Paul into their film to fit perfectly into their film's predetermined agenda. I understand that. I've worked in media all my life, but Paul finds that very frustrating. as the subject is far wider than the narrow focus that many TV programs want him to talk about. And I wholeheartedly agreed. That's exactly the idea behind this channel, Professor Simon. It's not television. We can do things here on this channel which break the rules. We can let scientists say what they really want to say. We can do follow-ups. We can take ideas from viewers. This is why I enjoy making these films for you. Then he looked at me and asked me an amazing question. He said, Simon, why are you asking me to talk about earthquake lights? It had completely passed me by that Paul Devereux calls this phenomenon Earthlights. In fact, he coined that name. Paul explained that the phenomenon isn't only produced by seismic activity, but can also be manifested by pressure, atmospheric conditions, and the unknown. What he told me next really got my attention. He explained how in Western culture, Earthlights are often mistaken for UFOs. I was humbled and intrigued to know more. So how do we proceed? Well, we agreed that Paul would film himself without an agenda and be free to say what he wanted about Earthlights. What I'm going to share with you now is what Paul delivered. It is the most fascinating and revealing description of the phenomenon.
Well, when I'm asked what are Earthlights, they seem to be of the same sort of family as earthquake lights and ball lightning. And ball lightning occurs in association usually with thunderstorms. Earthquake lights usually glow in the sky that occurs just before and perhaps just after an actual earthquake takes place. And sometimes it produces balls of light rather similar to Earthlights. They are occasioned by the pressure in the tectonic mass of the ground. They are unusual. They have special properties that I'll mention later. They are usually spherical and usually aerial in the sky, but sometimes they can come out of the ground and have been seen emerging from the ground. They are usually about sort of football size, lights, spherical, but not always. They are usually luminous, hence lights, but they are can also be black, pitch black. I've seen both kinds, and in fact, it was a case, an event in 1967, May 1967, that really got me interested into them. It told me that things weren't quite what everybody says. And it was when I was at art college in Ravensbourne College of Art, as then was, which is about 3 or 4 miles south of Bromley on Bromley Common in Kent, just south of London. I had gone to we were on the top floor, third or fourth floor in the studio, and I didn't want to put on the artificial lights because I was mixing some colors and I wanted natural light. So I went over to the north-facing window of the studio and something caught my eye, and I looked up and there was this pulsing orange light coming towards the college. And it came to a halt over the field in front of the college. It was about, I don't know, a few hundred feet up in the air, perhaps 100 feet, perhaps 300 or 400 feet, I'm not sure. and it came to a complete stationary halt. And this one was not spherical, it was rectangular, just like a door, corners and everything, and pulsing orange. I was shocked. I couldn't say anything for a few minutes, and I called out to other people who were still working late in the college. It was in the late afternoon, early evening in May. So there's still light outside, but it was getting dark inside the studio without artificial lighting. Hence, I was at the window. This thing came down and was just pulsing there. I called out to the others, so other people saw this as well. And also I saw that out on the car park below, people were coming, streaming out of the ground floor of the college, looking up at this thing. So a lot of people saw it. Pulsing rectangular light. And it did other things, but I won't go into that. It sort of changed its shape. It was just riveting. And I didn't know what to make of it. Finally, when it faded, it left a sort of rosy smudge in the sky for about 15 minutes. It was a prolonged event. What we found out the next day, that a video crew from the college, training to be TV technicians and so on, about a mile and a half south of the college, there was a place called Keston Ponds. And one of these ponds had actually got a reputation for having poltergeist activity around it. Anyway, the group from the college had just packed up all their equipment when this ball of white light came down and hovered over that particular pond. And I talked to people afterwards, and they said, well, it was like white, glowing, but there was a brighter sort of almost crescent shape inside its core. And it was a sort of football-sized thing. And it hissed, and everybody looked at it shocked, and then it flew off. So this was happening at more or less the same time, or just after we saw this rectangle of light. So this was a pretty impressive event. In 1967, there was quite a lot of reported UFO activity, but this sort of seemed to me something out of an Old Testament rather than any spacecraft or anything. It had a huge impact on me, as you can imagine. Nobody would believe you except people who saw it. And people actually saw it from different angles, by the way. So consequently, when years later, when I started researching these things, and I researched them in outback Australia, where they're called min lights, amongst other things. I've studied them in the Americas, for example, in Marfa, Texas, where people see lights. But basically, they are anomalous light forms. Now, interestingly, about 2 or 3 months after the sighting of this thing at the college, I was with a group of friends hanging an exhibition at a gallery in Norwich, and we were driving back one late sunny afternoon, about in Suffolk, I think we were, somewhere along there. And suddenly, a field away to our right, driving down, a black sphere circle, completely jet black, perfectly circular, appeared, and it was flying along level with us, just a field or so away, just above treetop heights. And it was extraordinary. It was a left-hand drive car, a VW Beetle. So the driver didn't see it, but the passenger in front of me, I was sitting in the back, we both saw it and couldn't say a word. It was such a shock. And then the thing just disappeared, just like that. And it reappeared a field or so further on, and then flew off up into the solar sun glare. And then we both yelled and made the driver then squealed down the road. And he was very annoyed. We didn't tell him at the time. We couldn't speak. So they can be black, and I've talked to other people. I've researched with researchers in Norway, where they have reported black objects. There's also reports of black ball lightning. And I think this might be some sort of polarizing effect between light and absence, on off sort of thing. I don't know. Don't know what they are exactly, but we can speculate. But they are exotic, and they behave sometimes as if they have a sort of animal-like intelligence. They're not recognized in mainstream modern culture, Western culture, but people have seen them and incorporated them into their cultures over generations and centuries. For example, in China, there's a particular mountain, and there's a temple on the mountain, and one particular pinnacle on the temple tower is made to look at the Bodhisattva lights. And in the 1930s, a Western writer actually saw these things. So the great orange fluffy balls of light flying out over the void, because it's right high up on the mountain. In India, likewise, there are temples dedicated to the lights, where they're given some sort of divine attribution. In fact, there are 2 temples I know of in India. And many other cultures near the northern part of India, near the Himalayas, lights are seen, called Chota Admi, which are believed to little men with lanterns. In Malaysia, they are called Penanggal, the spectral heads of women who have died in childbirth, and a whole range of things all around the world. They're the mother of gold in South America, the Mal de Oro, and they just incorporate them into their cultural mythology. And what has happened here is that they are incorporated into our mythology of UFOs, flying saucers, which were all the rage back in the day. I call them, coined the term Earthlights, because I wanted to separate them from the idea of flying extraterrestrial craft. These things belong to the Earth in some way. And we know the Earth can produce light. In fact, you can demonstrate it yourself if you want. You can get 2 chunks of white quartz, rock quartz, darkened room, rub them together, and they'll produce light. Triboluminescence, it's called, electrical effect, produces photons. We perhaps seeing that on a large scale with earthquake, tectonic movement, and so on. But they are seen, another distinction from earthquake lights, they're not all seen in conjunction with earthquakes. Other things can trigger it, sort of reservoirs, bodies of water, lakes. They are the water pressure on the underlying geology can sometimes generate electrical phenomena. That's what they are, plasma above them. So earthlights can be produced in that way. I suspect there's also atmospheric pressures. I've seen one of those. In fact, I remember we used to live in Cornwall in southwest England. And back in the mid-1990s, there was an earthquake, quite a large one for the British Isles. But about a year or so, 18 months before the earthquake, I remember coming back with some friends about midnight, and we saw balls of golden light, quite large, dropping out of the cloud base very softly, silently, at an angle. And this happened 3 or 4 times as we watched, because we pulled the car in to have a look. And the staggering, but that was it. We didn't know anything about an earthquake that was coming, so I think pressure was building then. It's called the tectonic stress theory, that might generate these lights. When the earthquake did strike, the Geological Survey came down to take down reports of light phenomena in Cornwall. Moonlight lights are slowly faded, or rectangular lights moving jerkily and then disappearing, and so forth. Consistent accounts and descriptions across the county of the thing. And the epicenter was just on the coast of Cornwall when the earthquake did come. So they definitely happen. They are seen, and we don't really know what them. But my interest was from those early experiences and subsequent ones when I was researching. And we have produced TV documentaries on them, and written 2 or 3 books on them, and also chapters in books. So if you want to check out the details, you can there. You can't really explain them just in the spoken word. So other people have seen them. They've seen them down the ages. They are definite phenomena. And they have, as I said, curious and exotic characteristics. The exact nature of them is unknown. They are presumably some form of plasma. They have unusual characteristics, as I said, and they have sometimes the lights display things you would expect at a subatomic level, sort of quantum physics level stuff. For example, in 1905, there was a very well attested outbreak of light phenomena in Wales, near the Llyn Peninsula, which is a repeater epicenter for small quakes, but sometimes rather larger quakes in Wales. And in 1905, this outbreak of lights occurred. It was associated with a religious outbreak of a particular type of Christianity, which may be accidental, I don't know. But between a place in Barmouth and the Llyn Peninsula, there is a great major fault called the Mocros Fault. And we were able to plot, because it was very well described, and newsmen came from London and everybody. So we have a clear idea where these lights, often, as I say, from the ground, they went seen coming up. Sometimes were columns of light, shapes, triangles, circles, all sorts of things. And we were able to plot more or less their exact emergence. And when you see the whole thing, it's like you see the lights all along the Mocros Fault. In one case, there's a chapel with a field in front of it that is exactly on the Mocros Fault. And people had seen ruby red lights, 3, emerge out of the field, out of the ground. And the lights moved around, and 2 of them fused together, and then they flew off. On another occasion, a light appeared, and like a blue bar of light hovering over the road in another area where there was a lot of outbreaks in this Welsh outbreak. But the thing is, on one side, witnesses could see it. On the other side, they couldn't see anything. And there's a number of cases around the world of lights being seen in one direction, but not in another. So they are behaving like some macro-quantal event. So there's some level there. So they are exotic, I think, plasma phenomena. I've talked to people all over the world who have researched them, seen them, filmed them, photographed them, and they are an unresearched area, I think, of nature's rich store of mysteries. And I think they have a lot to teach us if we were even looking. And only the fringe are looking at them. They got immediately merged into UFOs. And I'm not sure what UFOs are, but these aren't spacecraft. These aren't extraterrestrial. They are terrestrial. They are Earthlights.
Wow, thank you, Paul. That was fascinating. Brilliant research, personal insights, and a startling conclusion. That Earthlights are real. Earthlights might just explain a number of UFO sightings. Earthlights are seen all over the world, and science and independent thinkers need to accept this reality and start studying a whole new, misunderstood force of nature. The truth is out there, waiting to be discovered. And you can discover Paul Devereux's website at pauldevereux.co.uk. It includes a biography of Paul, information on Earthlights, a world shop where you can buy Paul's books, and a link to his latest book, The Powers of Ancient Sacred Places, which should be out later this year. Thanks for watching. I really enjoyed making this film, and thank you, Paul Devereux, so much for your contribution. That's exactly what this channel is about. It's about listening to you. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe, and a thumbs up is always very welcome, because the truth is out there.